Hey guys, it's Andrea. Today, we get a history lesson about Ernest Shackleton. Everybody loves Hagrid, and we ask the question, Dirgo didn't have any water at all? Like, any? Come nerd out with us.
Welcome to the TNG Podcast, the number one place in the Alpha Quadrant to geek out about all things Star Trek: The Next Generation. I'm your co-host, Shereese.
Hey, I'm your co-host, Andrea. Today we're talking Season 4, Episode 9, Final Mission. This episode was written by Casey Arnold Ince and directed by Corey Allen. After learning that he's been accepted into Starfleet Academy, Wesley Crusher welcomes Picard's invitation to accompany him on an away mission that could resolve a mining dispute on an arid world. But following a shuttle crash and a near disastrous search for water that leaves the captain near death, Wesley finds himself charged with the weighty responsibility of keeping both himself and Picard alive until a rescue team can locate them. Damn.
Yes, this is, oh my gosh, I'm so excited to talk about this episode because I felt like this was the perfect send-off episode for Wesley. It was just such a nice way to wrap up this character. Which This is not the last time we see Wesley, but it could be. They could have done that. They could have just left it here, and I would have been like, okay, like, and they could have just given us reports about Wesley for the rest of the seasons. Like, I just heard back from Wesley. Like, Beverly could have said that.
He's doing great. Yeah.
Or they could have mentioned something like, oh, I'm going to Starbase, blah, blah, blah. I'll make sure I hook up with Wesley when I get there. Like, they could have just dropped mentions of him, and I would have been perfectly happy. And in fact, this is a better send-off than the actual send-off we get for this character. In season 7, I think
6 or 7. Yeah.
Which is awful.
I'm glad that it is an awful send-off. This episode, here's some background. This episode was created expressly with the purpose of providing an appropriate way for Will Wheaton to leave the show because he had asked to leave TNG so he could pursue offers to appear in feature films and whatnot. Now, one of the showrunners, Michael Piller, said, quote, there had been a lot of very bad feelings around the way Tasha Yar was sent off. So we were determined to give Wesley a send-off that had real value and something that stayed with us. We finally decided he would go to the Academy, which I think was Gene's idea, and the most reasonable and easiest, which also keeps him alive for future episodes. And I got that from Captain's Logs, the unauthorized complete Trek voyages.
That was just a genius decision.
Yes. Yeah, let's give him a proper send-off. It's an actual goodbye, not just like last week's episode where he just wasn't there for some reason, right? And it keeps him alive so that there's the opportunity for him to like come back and visit if he wants to.
But honestly, and even if he doesn't, it's fine. And I agree that Tasha Yar's send-off was garbage, which is why they had to redo it with yesterday's Enterprise. Thank God that they redid that. And I think this totally is what Tasha should have had. Like this episode here where it's a proper send-off. It leaves us feeling good about everything. It leaves us feeling good about Wesley. It leaves us feeling good about him leaving. We're actually cheering him on. We're like, even if we never see this character again, we're like, woohoo, go Wesley, go.
Yeah,
like we're excited for him. We're not like, wait, did he just get killed by wind? You know, it's not like that.
And now he has a fucking jam stain on his face. What the hell?
So anyways.
All right. So Wesley is called to the bridge and Picard razzes him a little bit about, I've been waiting here 10 minutes for you to show up. And he's like, I know. I'm so sorry. It's just, I was running this. And Picard goes, I hope you know that kind of tardiness will not be accepted at Starfleet Academy. Congratulations. You got to, kind of razzes him a little bit. And Wesley was like, for reals? Starfleet Academy? Wow.
I've been applying there for like 4 years.
Yeah. So Picard says, I have this negotiation with this mining colony, and I'm leaving in 10 minutes. I would love it if you would escort me onto this, as kind of your final mission. And of course, Wesley's like, heck yeah, let me go get like my recorder to like film all of this or whatever he does.
Let me go get my lunch pail.
My lunch pail and my jacket. And the Enterprise is also B-plot, like called away to aid this peaceful planet that appears to be under some kind of attack because they're like, help, our radiation, our like atmospheric radiation has jumped up like 30,000%. We can only assume we're under attack, but we're a peaceful planet.
There's some crazy shit that's just like popped into orbit out of nowhere.
Yep.
And they have absolutely no defensive capabilities on this planet. It's just like
which seems like a bad idea. Like even Rise has got to have some like space cannons to like protect itself.
I don't know.
Case,
Rise
right?
let that Ferengi come through with a rifle when they weren't to have any weapons. So I don't know. I think Rice is on the honor system, honestly.
Yeah, they really are.
So we have Chairman Sanji of Gamelin 5, who's like, help us. We have no ability to protect ourselves or defend ourselves against anything. And we're all going to die of radiation poisoning from some ship that's trying to kill us. So Riker's like, all right, we're going to handle that crisis while Picard and Wesley go do this mining thing, which should be pretty simple, straightforward mission. And I do have to say, Chairman Sanji's makeup was very cool. It was weird.
Oh, I didn't like it.
I knew you wouldn't like it. It had this like melted lip look, which was that's disturbing. Like just the idea that you can't open your mouth, whatever. But
well, I just thought, how do you eat unless you're a straw?
I thought the same thing, but you could just have small pieces maybe through the whole, I don't know. But anyways, I did think the same thing.
Maybe they don't need to take in, maybe they can fucking photosynthesize. Who the hell knows?
Or absorb things. I thought the look was cool though. I think the look was very complete as an alien makeup.
It was
kind of oceany, and her hair kind of looked like tossed and tussled, and she had all these spots on her face that were like barnacles. It just looked, to me, it had an ocean feel.
I can see that. I actually did not like the makeup look, and I really didn't like the hair, because it was like, hey, how about we just do 3 lumps of hair, one on either side and one on the top, and one of the lumps is just a braid hanging down. And I was like, you could even see like the hair tie holding it, and I was like, I didn't like that. Didn't care for it at all. Every time she was on screen, I was like, I'm just gonna not look at you. But they do go. So they let Picard and Wesley take off in the shuttlecraft that's piloted by
Captain Dirgo. And this shuttle
looks like a very rascally, kind of a sketchy sort of kind of guy.
Almost kind of like a pirate. You kind of feel like a pirate.
Yes.
But he's not a pirate, but he kind of makes you feel like he's a pirate, but like not a very good pirate.
Like pirate. He gives me major like smuggler vibes.
Yeah, like maybe a smuggler, but also not a very good smuggler. Like whatever he's doing, he's not making a lot of money doing it because
he's just got one effing shuttlecraft. That's it.
And his shuttlecraft looks all old and busted, and it's basically held together with rubber bands and chewing gum. Yeah. And when Wesley looks at it,
why they don't take a Federation shuttlecraft is beyond me.
Well, that's what Wesley wanted, right? Wesley was just like, this looks like an antique or whatever. He kind of whispers to Geordi when they're looking at it in the shuttle bay, but Captain Dirgo hears him and is so offended. And it's just like, I don't have all this money and fancy technology that you guys have, but this is my ship. She's a good ship and she's done me well and blah, blah, blah. He's totally offended. So Picard smooths it all over by saying like, we're honored that you are going to take us, to our mission. Yeah. And so we are happy to ride in your ship. I'm sure she's a very fine and sturdy ship and all this stuff. And it's really just Dirgo's pride that demands that he's trying to do a good thing by ferrying them across, but it's completely 100% unnecessary because they have their way better shuttles and you could just meet them there on the surface. Like there's no reason to take your ship, but whatever. Yeah. He's like, I'm sure it's a fine ship. We'll take your ship. They get on the ship and boy, do they regret that decision.
2 minutes after they take off
and the Enterprise warps out of there.
Yeah, the Enterprise is like, we got to go help this other planet. So 1 second after the shuttle leaves the shuttle bay, the Enterprise warps off. And about 10 seconds after that, they have the port thruster module blows out and the ship looks like it's absolutely going to crash. And they manage to steer towards a moon around Pentaris 3 and they just have a crash landing. And I love that.
And thankfully the moon is M-class. Phew.
Thankfully, because that shuttlecraft wasn't going to support any kind of life and they would have been dead before, before the Enterprise knew anything about what had happened. The average temperature on this moon is 55 degrees Celsius, which I did the math is about 131 degrees.
Holy cow. So it's basically Arizona.
Yeah, I was going to say it's Palm Springs in the summer.
Yeah.
Okay. There's no water or food.
It's Arizona all year round.
Yeah. And there's no Florida water. Because the shuttle is so small, he's like, I can only carry so much stuff. So I don't have water. The replicator is completely offline. Everything is busted.
I'm going to say that that's a crap answer though, because to not have emergency supplies, like even in my car, I drive a tiny little electric car that you could probably pick up with one hand. I've got a little first aid kit in there. Like, come on, like I've got some stuff, some supplies. Like maybe I don't have rations and whatnot because it's not a ship, it's not a shuttle, but I do have some like emergency water and I've got some stuff. So for him to be like, we have no emergency supplies whatsoever because my ship can only hold so much. It's like, I'm going to put a flag on the play there and say, you should have emergency supplies. So some other stuff you took, you probably shouldn't.
Especially since you're a fucking smuggler going into God knows what sketchy areas, you probably should have some backup shit.
Especially have emergency supplies.
Shereese, I live in Los Angeles and I have a bug out bag in my house and in my car. Okay. Because you never know when shit's going to go down and you need some emergency supplies. You just never know. Like, I'm not a crazy hoarder, but I've got a backpack with like Band-Aids, water, like a flashlight,
like some stuff, you know, just like the basics. And so for him to say like the replicator's down because my ship is old and busted, that's fair. I hear you there. But to say, oh yeah, we have no emergency supplies whatsoever.
No water?
The look on Picard's face where he's just like, all right, well, first things first, we've crash landed. We can't stay in the shuttle because it's going to be like an oven in there because we're just in the middle of the desert with the sun's beating down on us. So like, we've got to, you know, wrap our heads around, get some eye protection, some head protection. Yep. Let's get the food. Let's get the water. And we'll go and try to find shelter.
We have to find, it looks like a 2-day walk away is a mountain range. It is so freaking far away. And
Dirgo's just like, we've got nothing. We've got nothing for you, pal. It's like not even water. That's really all we need is water. Like, it'd be nice. Yeah. We could just take our shirts and make some little hats or eye coverings or something, but water we need to live.
Yes. And Picard says we're going to have to walk to those mountains because where there's mountains, there's shelter because we need shelter from the sun. And this shuttlecraft is going to act like an oven.
It's going to get
death. Even hotter. Yeah. So Dirgo's like, are you crazy? I can't leave the ship. That's really far away.
And he's also like, and I'm the boss of this. I'm the captain. I'm in charge of this mission. What?
And this is what separates people like me from the greats, like people like Picard, because I would have been like, fine, fucking stay here and die. I don't care. I'm going. Goodbye. Whereas Picard pulls him aside and doesn't even chastise him. He just says, look, if you have any better ideas, I'm absolutely open to hearing it. And Dirgo's like, no, fine. You know, and I thought, see, Picard has the big stick, right? But he doesn't even pull it out. He's just like, hey man, like if you have any better ideas, I'd love to hear it. But
which Wesley totally does. Wesley's like, how dare you? Who do you think you are? He's the captain.
I'm 100% Wesley.
Yeah,
I'm Wesley.
I am too, especially in this highly charged situation. And actually, you know, we talked last week about how one of your worst nightmares, and I'm totally putting words in your mouth, but one of your worst nightmares is like reality shifting around you. And not knowing what's real and what's not. It's basically living in the Matrix. For me,
it's not a worst nightmare, but the idea, like that plot always gives me the heebie-jeebies for sure. Yeah.
For me, it's this. It's being trapped and stranded with people who are illogical. This to me is like hell on earth because
that's how people die.
That's exactly how people die. And it's frustrating because not just illogical, but illogical and not team players. So they're not trying to find a solution where everybody wins. They're just kind of out for themselves, or they're doing things that are just outright dangerous. Like I'm actually thinking of this scene from the movie War of the Worlds where they have to be like super quiet so that the aliens can't find them. And Tom Cruise and his daughter are hiding in some basement or whatever. And they find some stranger in this basement.
Oh, that's
right. And the stranger loses his crap. And he just starts screaming, yelling like, it's the end of the world. We're all going to die. And Tom Cruise is like, shut up or the aliens will hear us and come kill us all. But the guy can't shut up because he's losing it.
Yeah, so he's lost it.
Chokes him out, kills him, tells his daughter, like, close your ears, kills him so that they don't get killed by the aliens. And it's like, this is a nightmare.
That was, and which, by the way, was 100% the right call.
And it's a horrible thing to even have to make that call. And it's like that guy put him in the situation. So this situation here, being trapped on this planet where they've got to find a way to survive. First of all, like, I don't like living too far away from a Starbucks, let alone in the middle of nowhere. So I've got no survival skills whatsoever.
I'm like, I will make you a bug out bag and drop it off for you, girl. Yeah. Okay.
This whole scenario is terrifying for me. But then to have at least Picard, who's like, all right, we need shelter, we need water, we need head coverings. Like, he's got a plan. I'd be like, oh, thank God, let's follow him. But then to have somebody who's like putting a monkey wrench in the system, like, I'm the captain here. Listen to me. We don't have rations, but we're going to stay on the ship. Like that. I just like, that freaks me out. It freaks me out.
See, now I know what our roles are going to be
in the zombie apocalypse.
Yes, because you're going to be the
one who dies.
No, you're going to be the one that I'm going to be like, Shereese, do not worry about survival. I got you. You just need to find a cure.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be the one building a shelter because in this kind of situation,
I am Legend that piece. Yep.
Yeah, you absolutely are. And I'm going to be the one that's like, I am going to not only find a shelter or build a shelter, but I'm going to find a way to not have to go hunting and gathering every day, like a way that like gets us food and water. Like I'm very good in survival scenarios.
Wow.
So that scenario does not make me uncomfortable at all. I'm like, okay. I know exactly what to do. We got to get away from the shuttlecraft. And making the arrow out of broken pieces of the shuttlecraft to indicate which way you're going, 100% the right way to go. Because in a circle, you have 360 degrees of possibility.
That's true.
And I mean, granted, the Enterprise is like, we can read from orbit,
just scan or whatever.
Yeah, we can just scan and be like, oh, there's their comm badges. So that's.
But they did end up going into a cave underground, which does mess with comm badges sometimes.
Yeah,
so that
it can mess with like location. But to leave a marking of like this is where we've gone is the right thing to do.
I wouldn't have thought to do that either. Many things that's that I was like, huh?
That's how we know how we're gonna work it out, girl. Because I've got survival skills. Deal. Anyway, so. I'm going to just kind of B-plot wrap this up because it's not super important. So the Enterprise reaches Gamelon 5 to find that this unidentified ship, which the planet thinks is like possibly attacking them, is actually an abandoned garbage scow filled with radioactive waste. And it was like jettisoned from some other planet, but it just happened to get caught in the planet's gravitational pull. So that's why it's there. So I think that's actually a really interesting premise because we have metric tons of space shit floating around our atmosphere that is just floating around up there. Right. And so it makes perfect sense that like space garbage is going to be a problem at some point, you know? And so they attempt to send this like a construction barge to kind of attach thrusters and just push it into the sun so it can just melt and be destroyed, except that it doesn't work. And now the Enterprise is risking lethal radiation exposure from this barge
because they are going to tractor it themselves through. And the reason why they can't just like push it, like just give it a shove with a reflector pulse or something is because there's an asteroid belt between where they are in the planet and the sun. So if they just push the barge into the asteroid belt, it's just going to stay in the asteroid belt and be way too close to the planet still. So it has to actually be navigated through all the rocks to get into the sun. And my first thought was, why don't you tractor it? Which was immediately answered where they said, we will like die from radiation poisoning. And I was like, oh, bad idea. Don't do that. But then their other plans didn't work. So they were like, all right, let's tractor it. Like, we got to go.
Yes.
So they're tractoring it and the shields are just going down, down, down. The radiation levels are going up, up, up. They're like, this is bad news. Yeah.
This is bad news. And, you know, a couple of things of note, there isn't a lot with this B plot, but a couple of things of note. Beverly is up at the bridge, which I think is a good place for her to be because she is putting out like commands for, you know, I want all the like families and children and all that to be in the innermost part of like the saucer section where there's the most shielding. That makes perfect sense. They have kind of this countdown of like what level of radiation they're at before they get to lethal exposure. They tractor beam it, they maneuver it through the asteroid belt and then release it out into the sun. Now, that's kind of the end of that story. And I sort of made a capsule review of that. But eventually they get word from this mining planet that like, hey, Picard never showed up. So how long do you want us to wait before we start doing search and rescue type stuff? And so, you know, Picard and Wesley and Dirgo have walked and walked and walked. And by the way, I don't know if you noticed, but one of the things that they took out of the ship when they made head coverings for themselves is they took strips of fabric and made a belt so they can tie supplies to themselves. And I was like, and this is why you need pockets right here. This right here. So you don't have to fucking fashion yourself a belt to hold like a knife and a tricorder and a God knows what else. So they finally arrive at this cave. And I always hated this episode. And I'll tell you why a little bit later, but it freaked me out when I was a kid, when I watched it the first time. They arrive at the cave and they're searching for water and Captain Dirgo drops a flask of alcohol. And this is survival 101. You have to pool your resources. There's always going to be one asshole. And we just saw this on an episode of Battlestar Galactica that you and I were watching, where they're down to like nothing. And somebody's like hoarding protein bars, potentially, allegedly. Right. And it's like, this is why you can't do this. So this is the kind of thing that starts splitting groups apart and ripping people apart. And he drops this alcohol flask and he demands it back. But Picard says it's far more valuable as a coolant or as a disinfectant. And he orders Wesley to keep it as part of the medical supplies.
Which I thought was clever. And he also mentions that drinking alcohol is going to make you more dehydrated.
Yeah, it's
and want water idea. Even more. So he's thinking, we need liquid. I have liquid. I'm going to drink this alcohol. But that's actually going to make you way more thirsty. And in this life or death desert situation where we don't know where water is or when we will get it.
Minutes can change everything. Yeah.
This is the last thing you should be drinking.
Yeah, it's absolutely the last thing. Now, one of the writers did say, and I'm just sort of paraphrasing, that I don't know how much you know about the Shackleton expedition to the South Pole and how horribly wrong that went in the early 1900s.
I know exactly zero about that.
Okay. Let me tell you just a little teeny bit about it. I believe his name was Ernest Shackleton. He was leading this polar expedition to discover the South Pole. And he had a ship called the Endurance, and they sailed from, I don't know where. He's a British explorer at the peak of like British colonial exploration. And the ship became trapped in the ice, and everybody was in a life and death situation. And they had to abandon the ship because the ice was like crushing it. Then they had to like walk hundreds of miles to try to survive. And like literally they spent like months trapped on the South Pole, and not one person died, not one. And so Shackleton, when they were rescued and came back, was seen as this like big national hero. And there was a whole thing about it. One of the things, and he wrote he kept a journal of like everything that happened. And I actually have a coffee table book about this like polar expedition. It's absolutely mind blowing, like study of like human behavior. One of the things that happened on this expedition was exactly what we see with Captain Dirgo and the alcohol. They had to keep alcohol and stuff like locked in like a chest because people were starting to get like crazy and trying to go after the alcohol. And they're like, no, we need this as a disinfectant if somebody gets hurt or attacked by a polar bear or a fucking, because we don't know what's out here, even though polar bears are in the north and there are no polar bears in the South Pole. Yeah. Because they were like, we don't know what's out here. It could be anything. And there were like some animal attacks, I think, and stuff like that. So it was very, very important. And they basically had somebody with a gun who was like, nobody gets near this fucking chest. That is my understanding. And I know very little about it, but the Shackleton expedition is really fascinating. And it's kind of on my list of things to like learn more about. But one of the writers had said that he took a piece of that and wrote it into this story. So Captain Dirgo really wants this alcohol back. And Picard is like, Wesley, add this to the medical supplies and don't let him touch it, which I was like, oh my gosh.
Poor Wesley.
Yeah.
Wesley's just like, you're such a jerk. Wesley's still a kid. He's
you're mean.
At this point, he's like 16. So he's still, and he's mature for his age, sure, but he's still 16.
Yeah.
So he's just like, him and Dirgo are just going at it because he's like, what is your problem, man? Picard is trying to save us. And Dirgo's just like, shut up, Wesley. I know what I'm doing. I'm the captain of a ship that just broke down and could have killed us all.
You're the captain of a shuttlecraft. Let's be real here.
Yeah, that's not a ship.
Seem a little bit like an alcoholic and like a really sketchy dude. So I'm going to just say no to that.
Yeah.
Now in the cave, they end up finding water, this very artificial looking fountain. And Dirgo goes to drink, but this like really crazy cool force field comes up as a column and blocks him.
Actually bounces him back.
It bounces him back hard. Now he ends up firing his phaser at it. And something that I had failed to mention a little bit earlier is that with his tricorder, Wesley has detected this electromagnetic field that's kind of has these like weak and strong fluctuating sort of radiation patterns. And this was when they were walking. They're like, it gets stronger as we get closer to the mountains. There's something there, but I'm not sure. It's just sort of like an abnormal EM pattern. Now, Dirgo fires his phaser at this fountain because he's trying to break through the force field, but it causes this massive spike in the electromagnetic field and causes a rock fall. And Wesley's in the path of this rock fall. So Picard, the hero that he is, runs and pushes Wesley out of the way. And just like every hero in the story, he pushes the person out of the way and then stays exactly in the spot where you can be in danger and doesn't just move out of the way and becomes injured in this massive rock fall, which is a seriously bad problem. Now, while all this is happening and it's just a super teeny tiny shot, there is some kind of like flying mechanism, like a little flying,
like a beam of light
field.
Or something. Yeah.
Yeah. Something that knocks the phaser out of Dirgo's hand. And we find it later. It's encased in this like selenium shell. It's like a silica wrapped up shell. It's like a mummy kind of shell.
Yeah. So it basically,
like, oh God,
this light beam like neutralized the threat completely.
Yes, completely. We were on triage on Picard and find he's got a broken leg, a fractured arm, a head wound, and what looks like internal bleeding. And Dirgo was like, you can't use that alcohol to disinfect his wound. Let me drink it.
Right. And you're like, Dirgo, for the last time,
I'm not drinking the alcohol.
Take 3 steps back, buddy.
Yeah.
Take 3 steps back.
So Dirgo storms off, and Picard very wisely warns Wesley that Dirgo can be dangerous and that Wesley has to stand up to him. He's like, Wesley, I am injured. I think Dirgo's right. I could very well have internal bleeding. I'm not going to be much help to you. So Dirgo is irrational. He's angry and he's got like power control issues. So that's a very dangerous combination. So you're going to have to.
And he's panicking, which this is the occasion to panic. This is the time when you're stranded in the desert in a cave. People don't know where you are.
With an angry fountain. Yeah.
And that you can't access. Found water and you can't access it. All of this is the time to panic. But Picard's keeping his head because he's like, this is, except for now he's injured, but he was keeping his cool to be like, okay, we're going to find a way out of this. And Wesley, even though he's freaking out, he trusts Picard, but Dirgo is losing it. Dirgo is like the normal person in this situation who's freaking out, making bad decisions, just wanting to take action, shooting at stuff. So yeah, he's super dangerous because he's in fight or flight mode. He's not at all thinking. And actually in the next scene, we have Wesley and Dirgo talking around the fountain because Wesley's determined to figure this out. He's doing all kinds of scans. He's got to get
water. Yeah. Picard is failing fast and he's got to get at least water to him.
And he even says, he's like, I will figure this out. Like, I'm going to think my way through it. Like, we will figure this out. And Dirgo, in his panicked mind, literally says to Wesley, it's time to stop thinking and to start acting.
Which, by the way,
is never a time.
There's never a time to stop thinking. This is the time that you actually need to take 2 extra seconds and think out your plan. Because
this is exactly the
time. If you make a mistake, the results are fatal, which turns out Dirgo's going to eat his words because yes, Wesley's like, you fired your phaser and it triggered this force field. And then the EM frequency got all jumpy. And then this like photon flying thing of light came around the corner from an opening and shot your phaser and neutralized the threat. So maybe if I can like fuck with the EM frequency and kind of like get it to modulate a certain way, maybe I can kind of break through. And Dirgo's like, enough thinking, time for action.
Let's just shoot it a lot of times.
Yeah. Which also, where did you get another phaser from? Because your fucking phaser is now encased in selenium. So where'd you get this? Did you get it from Picard? Maybe?
So, I mean, my thinking was there should be 3 phasers that they took with them from the shuttle, right? There should be Picard's, Picard's, Wesley's, and Dirgo's.
Yes.
And Dirgo's was destroyed. So maybe he has Picard's because Picard doesn't need his. But then in this next scene, it looks like they all get destroyed, but then Wesley has another one. So I don't know. Maybe I miscounted, but
maybe Roga Danar taught him the trick of like hiding
the multiplying phaser trick at the Roga Danar online school of phaser harmonics.
He bought his ebook and learned how to like just make phasers come out of nowhere. Now Dirgo starts firing his phaser like crazy, and he tells Wesley, "You better fire at a lower frequency, so that way we're firing at 2 different frequencies, and maybe we can like confuse this. Like they call it the sentry.
Yeah,
maybe we can confuse the sentry from like whatever, right,
which totally makes sense. Through. Shooting once didn't work at all, so let's shoot it twice.
I think at different frequencies. Definitely,
that could work for us." Let's try that.
It might work for us. Yeah. So they end up firing, and Wesley's trying to do his magic. Now the sentry whips around again, and this time encases Dirgo in selenium and kills him. And this is what freaked me the fuck out as a kid, because Wesley runs over to Dirgo and he's got the screaming frozen face under this like mummified selenium, and that scared the shit out of me when I was little. And ever since then I've hated this episode. So I'm like, this is the one where like a fountain gets angry and kills people. Yeah, it mummified, like an angry fountain kills people. This is okay.
This is the one with the serial killing fountain.
Yeah, this is the angry fountain. Now Wesley's like, well, that sucks, but also kind of took care of my problem.
Right. That's what I was thinking. I was like, that's like awful, but also
not a loss either. Like whatever.
But also Dirgo brought it on himself. It'd be different if Wesley brought it on Dirgo. There'd be some guilt there or something.
Yeah. But
Dirgo
he didn't.
Totally brought this on himself. So it's like, well, that's it. That served. Yeah. Like you said, that solves that problem where now at least Wesley's not in danger from the killer fountain, in danger from the scary desert,
Dirgo.
And in danger from Dirgo.
Come on. Absolutely. Dirgo is he has been neutralized as a threat. So bye Dirgo. Now Wesley's like, I'm still going to think my way out of this. Give me a few minutes.
And he got
to check on the captain.
Extra scans during that.
So he sure did. He nailed some extra scans. He uses his phaser to toast up some nice rocks to keep Picard warm. And then Wesley has this moment that just makes me feel so squinchy inside. which is he spills his guts to Picard and he's like, everything that I've done, my school, my projects, the academy, the work on the Enterprise has been to make you proud. Like, I just want to make you proud. And I just thought that was so sweet and not overdone, like, or like just to have the saccharine moment. I thought it was really lovely. And Picard spills his guts to Wesley. He envies him. He's just the beginning of his journey. You got to find this man at the academy. He's still there. His name is Boothby. This is the first time we ever are introduced to the character of Boothby.
And Boothby comes back again and again and again. Boothby is in Voyager. Boothby becomes totally a thing.
Yeah, and we see him later in TNG as well. And it turns out he's not a professor or admin. He's a groundskeeper, and he looked out for Jean-Luc, and he'll look out for Wesley as well.
And he's long-lived because he's been at the academy for like 300 years.
He's like Hagrid at Hogwarts. Yeah, he's just the groundskeeper, and everybody loves him.
Except for Malfoy, but Malfoy sucks.
Fuck you, Malfoy. Which discussion about Malfoy belongs in every Star Trek podcast. I think
so. Yeah.
So he does tell Wesley, look, I've always been proud of you.
Which is like so beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. Which I'm like, it is really sweet. I've always been proud of you. Cause he doesn't, it's a father and son relationship without him being a father and without Wesley being his son. And it's just really sweet. And it's the perfect kind of thing you would be saying when it seems like you're not getting out of the situation alive. It's time to drop your shields and just say what you want to say, because this might be it.
And all of this beautiful moment, like last week we talked about Riker becoming a father and how beautiful that was, just to see, even if it was fake. Yeah. Here again, we have this father-son relationship that is really beautiful. And all of this kind of sharing, I just want you to be proud of me. I've been proud of you. Like, what kid doesn't want to hear that from their parent if it's a good parent-child relationship? Yeah. And I feel like this conversation, this send-off, everything is exactly, again, what Tasha Yar should have had, could have had, because with Yar, the way they kind of wrapped it up was at her funeral, she did the, Worf, you're the best. And it was just awful, right? But again, like, this is the time to say everything you wanted to say. And that's what this was. This didn't feel like, Worf, like just some like stupid platitudes or like really empty words. This felt legit. Like the writers actually dug deep for this one. I mean, it's not that anyone says anything profound, but it's the way they say what they say that really hits. The way that Wesley is genuinely just saying, everything I've done is just to make you proud, sir. Like, I just wanted you to be proud of me, and just for Picard to be like, I've always been proud of you. And you're going to do great in the academy and you're going to be amazing. It's just like, again, I have two feelings about it. One feeling is this is so beautiful and wonderful and I love it. And the other feeling is like, dang it for Tasha. Like they just did her dirty when she went off the show. They just messed that whole,
they really did. But you know what I appreciate is that they clearly learned from their mistakes and made it right, because this was the perfect send off. I think that it's great when you learn from your mistakes. Everybody makes them. It's just really nice to learn from them and like move forward in a productive way. And that is exactly what they did here. And I think that is really, really good, because we got a great send-off for Wesley. Now, of course, we can't have a Wesley send-off without Wesley thinking his way out of a problem. So Wesley does the voodoo that he does, and he does the Wesley magic and fluctuates that EM pulse generator, etc., with this fountain, because he's like, I'm going to get us water if it's the last thing I do. And he ends up, this photon sentry comes raging back, and he ends up doing the most ridiculous, like, beep, 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 like pushing a billion buttons at once on the tricorder. And
he pulls the data.
He totally pulls a data, and the photon thing passes, I think, right through him and goes and like deactivates the force field. So he's able to get water to the captain, and it's like, oh, thank God. Okay, now all we have to do, like, we know that the Enterprise is aware of like the situation. And so it's just really a countdown for the Enterprise to find them. And the next thing we know, Wesley's being woken up by his mom. They found him. Everything's going to be okay. Everybody's okay except Dirgo, who they fucking just leave there. And they're like, well, you're good. And like, and that's that. And it's really,
and Wesley walks out of the cave holding hands with Picard.
And I just thought, this is wonderful. So final thoughts really is, it's not as terrible as I remember. It's actually a really good episode. It gives us a way to say goodbye to Wesley and some closure on like the Wesley Picard relationship that clears up any confusion about how Picard can't stand him. And this, that's like, no, that's not true. He sees him sort of as a son very much. And like, And I love that. What are your final thoughts?
Yeah, same thing. Like, this was just such a lovely send-off for Wesley. I just thought this was really well done. And it left me feeling good. Like, I wasn't sad at all. I wasn't like, oh no, he's leaving the show. It didn't even register that he's leaving the show. It's just like, he's going to the academy. Like, he'll be back, or maybe he won't.
He's not
but
leaving the show, but And I mean, it gave him the option to leave the show as an actor, but it's really lovely that it's not the last time we see Wesley. We will see him again a few times. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really great, because then we get like further character development. I think the way that they wrote Wesley off the show at the end was trash, but we'll get to that when we get to that
episode was garbage. But I will say the other episodes he was in before we get to that garbage episode were fun. He has the episode with Ashley Judd, and he's got
the game.
And he's got an episode with the guy who ends up becoming Tom Paris in Voyager. That's a great episode.
That's a great one. The Colburn Starburst, I think is called the Colvert Starburst. Yeah.
And we would have not had those episodes if he never came back. And those are some of the best episodes. So
I love those episodes. That's the one where we get to actually see Boothby. You know, it's like, there's great little like kind of tie-ins. Like, the idea of this groundskeeper Boothby is introduced here, and then we actually see him and the Academy when we get to revisit. So
which we've never seen yet. The closest thing we've seen is that weird starbase that Wesley went to back in season 1.
Yeah, that's right. Where he like tested. Yeah. Well, that's it for this week, guys. Thank you so much for listening. Next week, we're talking season 4, episode 10, The Loss, and we'll see you next week.
Bye. Thanks for geeking out with us. Be sure to join the crew at thetngpodcast.com to be the first to know when we do our live shows or host events exclusively for our members. We'll see you next time.